Welcome to all of you here in Milan. I'm Rosa Rosnati and I'm honored to be the chair of this conference. I can't believe my eyes that after so long all of this has become reality. We have gone through a very difficult time all over the world. Italy and particularly Milan were deeply affected by the pandemic. And we lost a lot of people, also very close to us and even here at our university. For months, you could have walked through our beautiful cloisters, which are usually very crowded, and see almost nobody. So we were forced to postpone our conference, previously scheduled in July 2020. And we regret not having the possibility to have all of you sitting here in our amazing Aula Magna and enjoy the beauty and the atmosphere of our university. But anyway, here we are, and we are honored to host, at least virtually, the 7th edition of ICAR7. And with great pleasure, we want to start the conference with this welcome ceremony. I will add a few words afterwards, and now I just want to thank the ICAR committee for trusting us and give the opportunity to host ICAR here in Milan. And without further ado, I would like to take this short opportunity to welcome our Magnifico Rettore, the Italian Minister for Equal Opportunity of the Family, Professor Elena Bonetti, who is also the President of our Italian Central Authority, the Commission for Inter-Country Adoption, and later the President of the Juvenile Court, Carla Gatto, and the Member of the Municipality of Milan, Roberta Osculati, and the Director of the Family Study and Research University Center, Camillo Regalia. To all of them, I'm deeply thankful. A warm-hearted thanks to all of you for being here. My thanks are not formal or due to circumstances, but they stem from sharing the same perspective and devoting our efforts and energies to adoptive children and their family. And now I'm very honored to give the floor to our Magnifico Rettore, Professor Franco Anelli. Thank you.
I wish to express a warm welcome on the behalf of Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore and my own to the organizers of today's event, to the distinguished speakers, and to those who are following the opening ceremony of the International Conference on Adoption Research online. I would like to thank Professor Camillo Regalia, Director of the University Center for Family Studies and Research, and Professoressa Rosa Rosnati for their efforts in organizing this event. I'm grateful to Professoressa Elena Bonetti, Minister for Equal Opportunities and the Family and President of the Italian Commission for Inter-Country Adoption, to Dottoressa Carla Gatto, President of the Juvenile Court of Milan, and to Professoressa Roberta Osculati, Municipal Councillor of Milan, for their presence today. It was an honor to organize and host the 7th edition of the ICAR conference, which was supposed to be held in July 2020 and was postponed to this year due to the pandemic. Unfortunately, it is not possible to hold the conference in person due to the limitation imposed by the health situation. Despite these setbacks, we are delighted because 13 keynote speakers and more than 200 academics will attend these days of work, presenting the result of research conducted all over the world. ICAR7 is a great opportunity for researchers and professionals from all over the world working in the field of adoption to meet up and create a network aimed at identifying new lines of research and implementing intervention that can contribute to the well-being of adopting children and their families. We are hosting an important international conference, and I had prepared a little longer speech, but we all are looking forward to hear our minister, and since I know that her time is limited because of duty, as a member of the Italian government, I'm happy to leave her the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Magnifico Rettore, Professoressa Rosnati, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. I accepted the invitation of Professor Rosnati, and it is really a great pleasure to take the floor at the opening ceremony of ICAR7, which is an important and stimulating international conference which deals with one of the tools that is between my task as a president of CAI, but also closest to my heart, the international adoption. In my speech, I will focus on statistical data, and in particular for children with special needs in ICA, and the support from the CAI to adoptive families, to professionals, and to children in the countries of origin. We live a unique historical moment which, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, has stopped or slowed down many activities, especially in ICA proceedings. For the prospective adoptive parents, being suitable, traveling, matching, coexisting with the child in her or his country of origin, it became not only hard, but in some periods it was or it is still impossible until today. The last annual report drafted by the Commission for the Inter-Country Adoption, CAI in Italy, regarding couples of adoptive parents who applied for the authorization for foreign children to enter in Italy in 2018, that is, couples of adoptive parents who had obtained the decree of eligibility and had completed the ICA proceeding with the intermediation of an accredited body, highlighted the fact that a new low record number of cases was reached, which accounted for only 3% less than the year before. This fact suggested the possibility that the end of the progressive drop of the phenomenon observed in the past few years was now being reached, and that the lowest threshold was not likely to go further down. Observing the new data, which referred to 2019, this expectation was disregarded, and the negative trend which characterized the past decade emerges prominently. The high number of couples of adoptive parents reached a new low record number, dropping for the first time in Italy under 1,000 units, accounting for a 14% drop compared to the previous year. I remind that Italy remains around the world, after USA, the second country of reception for number of ICA. The upturn in the negative trend of couples of adoptive parents who applied for the authorization to enter in Italy for a foreign child for ICA purposes will inevitably weigh on the number of adopted children. Here, it is important to underline what has already been said in other occasions on the interpretation of the ICA phenomenon based purely on the numerical data, attributing an absolute negative connotation to the decrease in cases, risk polluting in the analysis of the phenomenon by shifting the emphasis from the quality of the adoptive part to the quantity of the ICA. In this regard, in the last decade, the constant decline in the number of international adoption is a consequence of internal transformations in the countries of origin, influenced by variable geometry, by political, economic, and social factors, dynamics that are often in rapid and unpredictable evolution. However, it should not be assumed that these transformations are necessarily negative. In many situations, these are determined, for example, by the accession and ratification of the Hague Convention, by legislative changes aimed at making ICA proceedings safer and more transparent, by the improvement of the international policies in favor of children and incentives for national protection measures for children. It is no coincidence that in many countries of origin of children there is a growth in national adoption and other forms of reception, such as foster care in one's own territory, guaranteeing in this way a reception that it does not imply an uprooting of the child and leaving a more subsidiary, if not entirely residual, task to ICA. In the ICA carried out in the recent years in Italy, as in many other countries, the incidence of children with special needs has in fact increased. As defined by the HCCH guidelines, children with special needs are those who may be suffering from a behavior disorder or trauma, physically or mentally disabled, older children, more than 7 years, part of a sibling group. In fact, it should not be forgotten that the ICA is primarily a protective measure at the service of the best interest of the child. Therefore, the appreciable desire of adults to offer a family welcome to a child can only be satisfied if the child cannot find in his country of origin adequate living conditions and well-being, of which the right to live in his own country, expressed by the principle of subsidiarity, is an essential part. At the international level, the reduction of cases also depends on the internal dynamics of the reception countries, for which there is a widespread lower propensity for ICA due to many factors, including those within the family unit relating to the growing instability of relations. Adoptive parents, as well as the economic depression that has gone through most of the traditional reception countries, frustrating the desires of many adoptive parents. In this scenario, the CAI, overseeing the safety and transparency of ICA within the dysfunction in compliance with the BIC, constantly maintains a relationship with the active subjects for the adoptive part. In particular, the CAI has promoted a constant dialogue with the countries of origin by negotiating, stipulating, and renewing bilateral agreements or memoranda of understanding with the central authorities, an activity that has shown a natural return also in quantitative terms on the stability of flows of entry of ICAE completed in our country. Concerning children with special needs, in 2020, compared to 669 children adopted through ICA, 395 of them, equal to more or less the 60% of the total, manifest one or more special needs. As in 2019, the phenomenon affects a clear majority of children adopted through ICA, but with a lower incidence than that recorded in this year. Another important issue of CAI is to support adoptive families. In Italy, unlike other European countries such as France and Germany, the criteria and the methods for granting reimbursement of expenses incurred by the adoptive parents in ICA proceedings they carry out are envisaged and regulated, but we have significantly increased the amount of this reimbursement. The second point, the second issue, is to support professionals. A fundamental support addressed to professionals dealing with ICA proceeding is training. A large remote training program was developed last year entitled Adoption Transforms Itself, New Responses to the New Needs of Children, for 60 hours of global training divided into 20 hours for each module, followed by more than 3,000 people coming from various professions dealing with ICA. The training project involves the activation of 3 integrated modules, the first of a purely legal approach, the second one for a psychosocial area, and the third aimed at the school area. The training modules aim to offer a critical constructive framework of the fundamental issues of ICA. Study files will be made available for participants, divided into didactic units consisting of videos and in-depth materials. In the current year, CAI is organizing other training parts directed to honorary Jews kids who are the first professionals with whom adoptive parents come into contact. Finally, in compliance with the principle of the Hague Convention and with the Italian law, accredited bodies that intend to receive accreditation in the field of ICA must undertake to participate in activities to promote the children's rights, preferably through development cooperation projects in the countries of origin of children. During the present mandate, the CAIS has chosen to continue to invest in development of the cooperation projects. The last call of tender published in the last June in 2020 gives priority to the development of the projects in specific geographical areas like as Africa, Latin America, and Asia, so that the impact on beneficiaries and on the territory is maximized. At the same time, a partnership agreement was drawn up to allow all accredited bodies to participate in the activities in the various roles envisaged, coordinator or partner, involving all public institutions and private bodies as NGOs, and the overall funding insists in the forecast on 8 projects divided into 3 pillars: health, aimed at promoting and protecting the right to health for all children, their physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being; reception, aimed at promoting reception activities for children who have been temporarily or permanently deprived of parental care; education, aimed at promoting and protecting the right to education for all children. 8 cooperation projects have been approved as a part of mentioned tender, which will soon start the activities. I am aware that the issue of the cooperation projects promoted by the central authorities of the receiving countries is controversial. However, I would like to point out that on the one hand, these cooperation projects are proposed with the final goal to support the prevention and contrast of the phenomenon of abandonment of children in the country of origin, and on the other hand, they never concern the specific matter of ICA. So, thank you very much for your attention and buon lavoro to all of you.
I would like to thank Minister Bonetti, who has honored us with her presence here today, and we all appreciate her daily hard work and dedication for future generations. We are grateful we are able to find the time in your agenda to be here. And before leaving us, as a sign of gratitude, we are pleased to offer 3 books published by our center. We hope you will find of some interest. The first one, recently published, talks about relational poverty. An emerging topic today is the last number of interdisciplinary study of the family. The second one is Extending Family Space, Adoption and Foster Care, always edited by our center. And the third one is about family impact, a model of assessment family policies. Thank you very much, and have a safe journey back to Rome. Thank you. I'm very honored to introduce to you our President of the Juvenile Court in Milan, Maria Carla Gatto, and thank you for being here with us. Thank you.
Buongiorno, mi scuso di non poter parlare in inglese e ringrazio molto per la possibilità che mi viene offerta in un così importante contesto di confronto internazionale di illustrare caratteristiche, dati e applicazioni dell'adozione nazionale davanti al Tribunale per i minorenni di Milano, che è un tribunale che comprende 8 province della Lombardia, quindi molto grande per estensione territoriale, numero di procedimenti civili e penali. Io affronterei prima l'aspetto... Sì. Illustrerei prima l'aspetto del numero delle coppie disponibili, poi del percorso attraverso il quale si arriva alla dichiarazione di adottabilità e quindi il numero delle sentenze che vengono annualmente pronunciate e le difficoltà dell'abbinamento dei bambini con bisogni speciali. Esaminando il primo di questi aspetti, cioè quante coppie presentano la loro disponibilità davanti al Tribunale per i minorenni di Milano, ci accorgiamo di una continua tendenza costante di riduzione delle disponibilità, in quanto le domande ricevute nel 2019 sono state 564, mentre 658 erano le domande dell'anno precedente, e quindi abbiamo una riduzione del 21% negli ultimi 2 anni, cioè dal 2018 al 2020, anno in cui le domande sono state 519. Va bene? E se queste domande...
Okay, so first of all, I would like to start off by thanking you very much for the opportunity that I have been given in such an important context in which we can have an international exchange. I would also like to excuse myself for not being able to speak in English. And this context gives us the opportunity to outline the characteristics, the data, and the implementation of national adoption with special regards to the juvenile court in Milan. Juvenile court in Milan is the largest juvenile court in Italy, enclosing 8 provinces, both for territorial extension as well as for the number of both civil and penal proceedings. I would like to start off by talking of available couples. Unfortunately, we have to observe a decrease in the number of available couples. Actually, in 2020, the Juvenile Court received 519 requests for national adoption, confirming a constant and continuous decrease of couples availability, whereby in 2019, the court received 564 requests and 658 were the requests in 2018, with a decrease by 21% over the last couple of years.
Quindi, se possiamo dire che la riduzione nell'ultimo anno può essere collegata anche all'emergenza sanitaria, analizzando un orizzonte temporale molto più ampio, si deve riscontrare una progressiva flessione. Infatti, se guardiamo gli ultimi 20 anni, cioè dal 2000 al 2020, riscontriamo che nel 2000 le disponibilità erano 1245, quindi oggi sono più che dimezzate del 58% in 20 anni. Questa flessione, a mio avviso, trova una spiegazione nel peggioramento delle condizioni sociali ed economiche negli anni della recente crisi, peggioramento che ha avuto conseguenze importanti anche nel territorio lombardo, nel ricorso alla tecnica della fecondazione assistita con esiti positivi e con maggiore facilità di accesso a questo diverso servizio sanitario, ma anche nel fenomeno generale del crollo delle nascite in Italia, che nell'ultimo anno sono state più di 400.000. Inoltre, la mancanza di sicurezza, di stabilità e di investimenti a favore di politiche in aiuto delle coppie genitoriali e in particolare delle coppie adottive certamente non incoraggiano scelte di genitorialità.
So if we can state that the decrease we have observed over the last year is partially due to the pandemic outbreak, When taking into account a longer period, and specifically the last 20 years, we can observe a constant and progressive decrease in the couple's willingness to adopt. Specifically, in 2000, there were 1,245 available couples, while today we only have 519, a decrease by 58% over 20 years. In my opinion, such a decrease is explained by a worsening of the social and economic conditions people have had to face during this recent crisis. And we need to remember that such crises hit hard also over the Lombardy territory. Moreover, the increasing success and availability of assisted reproduction techniques, along with the decline in birth rates, may also have contributed to such a decrease. Finally, the lack of security, stability, and investment in policies supporting parental couple, and specifically adoptive couples, do not favor the choice of embarking in the endeavor of becoming parents.
Ora affrontiamo il tema di come si arriva in Italia alla dichiarazione di adottabilità e la procura presso il Tribunale per i minorenni che propone il ricorso al Tribunale e nel 2019 ha aperto 185 procedimenti di adottabilità di minori che si trovano in stato di abbandono in quanto privi di assistenza morale e materiale da parte dei genitori. Tale dato risulta pressoché stabile negli ultimi 3 anni, erano stati 193 i procedimenti del 2018 e anche nel 2020 sono stati 144, quindi non si registrano particolari balzi negli ultimi 3 anni. Negli anni precedenti, invece, questi procedimenti per l'eventuale dichiarazione di adottabilità erano in media tra i 120 e i 140 all'anno, quindi appare evidente come negli ultimi anni si è registrato un incremento di ricorsi, cioè di situazioni in cui il pubblico ministero ravvisa possibili situazioni di abbandono. E questo non può che preoccupare, essendo collegata questa presentazione dei ricorsi a situazioni di abbandono da parte dei genitori e della famiglia allargata.
Now I would like to explain the process behind the declaration of adoptability. After a complaint filed by the Juvenile Public Prosecutor of Milan, the Juvenile Court of Milan initiated in 2019 185 proceedings in order to obtain as many declarations of adoptability for minors who are in state of abandonment, and therefore they were lacking the necessary physical and moral assistance from their parents. Such figures are stable if compared to those from 2018, when 193 proceedings were issued, whereas a slight decrease can be observed in data from 2020, when 144 proceedings were initiated. But actually, if we look at the situation over the past 3 years, proceedings to obtain a declaration of adoptability ranged between 120 and 140 per year. So we can observe in the past few years an increase in the number of complaints. Such an increase is not a positive signal, as it signals a widespread social suffering, which in turn is connected to a preoccupying increase in the number of minors residing in the Milan district who have been abandoned by their parents and relatives.
Guardando quanti sono le sentenze che sono state emesse nel medesimo periodo, riscontriamo che nel 2020 sono state pronunciate 83 dichiarazioni di adottabilità, di cui 54 relativi a bambini che hanno almeno uno dei genitori noto e 29 invece di bambini che non sono stati riconosciuti alla nascita. Più o meno analoghi sono i dati dell'anno precedente, perché nel 2019 sono 74 le sentenze e più o meno ripartite nella stessa maniera. Se allora facciamo un rapporto tra le coppie aspiranti adottive e i bambini adottabili, constatiamo che su tutto che ci troviamo di fronte a 84 minori adottabili a fronte di 564 domande di coppie nel 2019, e che se i richiedenti, almeno uno dei coniugi ha più di 45 anni. Quindi emerge che ci sono buone possibilità per le coppie giovani di adottare un minore. Più o meno lo stesso rapporto lo ritroviamo anche nel 2020. Se per i minori non riconosciuti alla nascita si arriva a una dichiarazione di adottabilità nell'arco di un mese, considerato che occorrono 10 giorni per formare l'atto di nascita e quindi attribuire un'identità, per i restanti procedimenti la media è di circa 1 anno e 4 mesi e naturalmente varia in relazione alle situazioni familiari che sono alla base del pregiudizio del minore. Tali procedimenti richiedono infatti una trattazione estremamente articolata rispetto a quelli relativi alla responsabilità genitoriale, in quanto laddove abbiamo minori che sono riconosciuti da almeno un genitore, occorre espletare degli accertamenti lunghi e complessi e quindi con un rilevante sforzo da parte di giudici togati onorari, perché in Italia il Tribunale per i minorenni opera in una composizione mista, cioè accanto ai giudici di carriera si affiancano gli esperti in materie psicologiche, psichiatriche, educative, pedagogiche, quindi con professionalità che integrano la professionalità giuridica. Occorre quindi nell'ambito di questi procedimenti acquisire informazioni e approfondimenti tesi a verificare l'irreversibilità o meno della situazione di abbandono in cui pare versare il minore, e soprattutto nel corso dei procedimenti è spesso necessario emettere dei provvedimenti interlocutori che cercano di assicurare al minore i necessari interventi di sostegno, rispondano al doveroso tentativo di verificare la possibilità di recupero di una genitorialità che non appaia irrimediabilmente compromessa. In ogni caso, quando questa genitorialità non viene recuperata, si procede alla dichiarazione di adottabilità e all'abbinamento del minore alla coppia più adeguata, procedendo a delle comparazioni trasparenti, sollecite, ponderate, che prevedono il conferimento dell'incarico ad un'equipe specializzata che è formata dall'assistente sociale che ha seguito il minore in tutto il suo percorso di vita e da un giudice onorario, cioè da un esperto che procede all'esame delle domande in ordine cronologico, alla comparizione tra le coppie realizzata attraverso colloqui e visite domiciliari e alla scelta quindi della coppia in grado di rispondere meglio alle esigenze del bambino, riferendo costantemente al collegio che è da me presieduto, che poi dispone l'avvicinamento tra bambino e coppia adottiva e fino ad aggiungere al collocamento presso la stessa.
Based on the number of initiated proceedings, the Juvenile Court of Milan issued 83 verdicts declaring the adoptability of as many minors. Of these 83 declarations, 54 pertained children whose parents were unknown, and the remaining 29 pertained children whose parents, Of these 83 declarations, 54 pertain children whose parents were known, and the remaining 29 pertain children whose parents were unknown. As for 2019, the court issued 74 verdicts, 41 involving children with at least one known parent, and 33 involving children who had been abandoned at birth. So, if we consider the prospective adoptive couples and the adoptable children ratio, we can see that there were, in 2019, 84 adoptable children and 564 requests issued by as many couples. But if we sort out from these numbers those couples in which one member is over 45, we are left with 339 couples. This means that young couples have a good likelihood of adopting a child. Similar ratio is found also for 2020. With regards to children who have been abandoned at birth, the declaration of adoptability takes 1 month. We need to consider that we need 10 days after childbirth to obtain the birth certificate and therefore grant the child a legal identity. With regards to the other children, those whose parents are known, the whole process takes about 1 year and 4 months, and of course varies greatly upon the family situation, which needs to be assessed before issuing the verdict. Such proceedings require longer and more articulated decision-making processes because when they do not involve children who have not been legally recognized by either of their parents, they entail long and complex verifications on the side of both regular and lay judges. We have to know here that the Juvenile Court in Milan works with both judges as well as who work in collaboration with experts that we call lay judges. And those experts are experts either in education, psychology, that help and assist the judge in their work. Moreover, it is often necessary to call for interlocutory decrees that, while providing the child with the necessary support intervention, check out for the possibility of retrieving the parental function in the neglecting parent. In order to pair an adoptable child with the most suitable couple, a complex and yet transparent and diligent process in which suitable couples are compared and assessed needs to be followed. The whole process is supervised by a specialized team composed by a social worker who knows the child and is aware of his or her needs, and a lay judge, therefore a professional, that examines an expert that examines the request in chronological order, compares the available couples by means of interviews and home visits, and proposes a possible match. The proposal is then evaluated by a board who needs to authorize it and to dispose the child placement with the chosen family, as well as to monitor the pre-adoption phase.
Concludo affrontando il tema di cui ha già parlato la Ministra Bonetti, dei bambini con bisogni speciali. Al fine di rafforzare l'azione di protezione e trovare risposte adeguate ai bisogni di crescita di bambini e di ragazzi che vivono in condizioni di pregiudizio aggravate dall'attuale crisi sanitaria, economica e sociale, per dare delle risposte a bambini che presentano special needs, il Tribunale ha ritenuto strategico costruire alleanze con la società civile. Un esempio di questa proficua collaborazione, anche durante il difficile periodo di emergenza epidemiologica, è stato l'inserimento nel sito internet istituzionale del Tribunale delle situazioni più complesse riguardanti minori con bisogni speciali, che ha consentito anche ai più fragili, dichiarati adottabili, di trovare una famiglia pronta ad accoglierli. È infatti comprensibile la difficoltà di realizzare l'adozione per bambini affetti da disabilità più o meno grave, come pure per quelli grandicelli, abusati o maltrattati, o anche per più fratelli. Attualmente, per esempio, stiamo cercando una famiglia per 3 gemelli che hanno 2 anni e quindi, dico, al di là delle loro situazioni contingenti, insomma, ritrovarsi 3 figli di 2 anni non è sicuramente una cosa facile. E in questo difficile contesto appare dunque straordinario riscontrare che c'è speranza e c'è futuro per i bambini più sfortunati e vulnerabili. Infatti, nonostante i mesi di duro lockdown, proprio durante questi mesi in cui naturalmente il Tribunale ha continuato a lavorare in presenza, Michele, con un suo ritardo psicomotorio, utilizziamo dei nomi di fantasia, e le sue difficoltà del linguaggio, ha trovato una mamma, un papà, una sorella e oggi vive in una cascina immersa nel verde. Negli stessi anni e negli stessi mesi, Angelo, affetto da spina bifida e idrocefalo, è stato accolto con affetto e con calore non solo da genitori, ma anche da 3 fratelli e da una nonna, tutti desiderosi di occuparsi di lui. Le ampie disponibilità della società civile, così pervenute al Tribunale a seguito della risposta agli appelli e attentamente approfondite attraverso colloqui degli esperti del Tribunale e le osservazioni specialistiche dei competenti servizi, hanno inoltre consentito di individuare famiglie adeguate anche per altri bambini, vittime di abbandoni, di maltrattamenti, alcune dei quali presentavano importanti sindrome genetiche, che oggi possono trovare una famiglia e vivono in una famiglia che dedica loro amore, attenzioni e cure. Questi risultati, frutto di scelte coraggiose e di responsabilità sociale, unitamente all'impegno quotidiano garantito dagli operatori del mondo della giustizia e agli operatori sociali dei servizi, spesso al centro in Italia di polemiche violente, danno un senso agli interventi a favore della fascia più fragile della nostra società, ma ci devono anche far comprendere che investimenti altrettanto coraggiosi devono essere fatti in sostegno delle famiglie adottanti che trovano difficoltà ad accedere ad un accompagnamento competente che possa affiancarli nei momenti di difficoltà. Questa è una carenza del nostro sistema. Le politiche per favorire la natalità devono essere accompagnate da politiche attente ai bisogni dei bambini e degli adolescenti. Occorre investire in un'adeguata formazione degli operatori e degli educatori, un'attenta azione di prevenzione e di tempestiva intercettazione del disagio, assicurando risorse necessarie per la predisposizione di adeguati interventi assistenziali e di sostegno anche di natura psicologica.
Now I would like to talk about special needs children, a topic that has been already dealt with by our Minister. In order to strengthen its protective function and to find adequate answers to the needs of children and adolescents who live in detrimental condition or who experience a worsening in their life situation due to the current social, economic, and health crisis, the court developed several strategic alliances with members of the civil society. An example of such a fruitful collaboration, also in spite of the pandemic outbreak and the restrictions adopted to fight its spread, is the court institutional website. The website hosts a section dedicated to special needs children. Such an initiative allowed also the most frail and disadvantaged of our children to find new and loving homes. Children suffering from a disability, children who have been physically or sexually abused, siblings, as well as older children, are less likely to find a couple willing to adopt them. For example, we're now looking for a new home for 3 2-year-old babies, and you can imagine that finding a home for 3 babies of 2 years old is quite a difficult task. In such a difficult context, I think it is extraordinary to see that there is hope, that there is future for the most fragile and disadvantaged. Actually, in spite of the lockdown, and actually during the lockdown, Michele, of course, this is a name of fantasy, suffering from a psychomotor retardation and language difficulties, found a mom, a dad, and a sister, and today lives in a farmstead in the countryside. During those same hard months, Angelo, suffering from spina bifida and hydrocephalus, has been welcomed in a new family and surrounded by the warmth and affection of his parents, 3 siblings, and a grandmother who were all looking forward to take care of him. After having been attentively evaluated throughout interviews carried out by court-appointed experts, as well as throughout direct observations conducted by local services, the great resources present in the civil society allowed the court to find eligible families that could welcome abandoned or neglected children, or children suffering from genetic conditions. Those children can now finally enjoy the warmth and support of a loving and nurturing family. These positive outcomes, stemming from courageous choices and from social responsibility, together with the daily commitment of the professionals working in the judicial world or in that of child services, give a meaning to the interventions in favor of the most frail and disadvantaged brackets of the population. However, they also underline the need for investments in support of adoptive families who find it hard to access to competent support services capable of accompanying them during the troubled or challenging times. Pronatalist policies should be accompanied by policies keeping into account the need of children and adolescents. Similarly, investments should be devoted to adequately train operators and educators, as well as to prevent and tackle distress by providing aid and support solutions, as well as psychological assistance.
Indubbiamente gli interventi di natura assistenziale e di sostegno hanno un costo, ma nella sostanza, se si riuscirà a garantire una situazione di maggiore benessere ai ragazzi, aiutandoli a superare le difficoltà personali e familiari, tale costo si tradurrà nel futuro in un sicuro risparmio di spesa e anzi potrà costituire la base di una cittadinanza attiva. Ecco che anche la giustizia minorile dovrebbe essere destinataria delle medesime attenzioni e riforme della giustizia che coinvolge il mondo degli adulti. In quest'ottica dovrebbe almeno beneficiare della digitalizzazione, strumento che al momento in Italia è escluso proprio per la giustizia minorile, così come dovrebbe essere destinataria della riforma e delle annesse risorse che stanno per essere predisposte nell'ambito del Recovery Plan attraverso l'istituzione dell'ufficio del processo. Perché se è vero quanto è stato affermato di recente a un convegno dal Ministro dell'Economia Franco, cioè che il banco di prova delle nostre riforme sarà il benessere dei giovani, qualora non riuscissimo a intercettare precocemente le situazioni di disagio, di pregiudizio, di violenza, di difficoltà in cui versano bambini e ragazzi, predisponendo adeguati interventi di progetti di sostegno e recupero in favore loro e dei loro familiari, possiamo fin d'ora escludere che sia possibile ipotizzare realisticamente una futura situazione di benessere sociale con gli annessi e pesanti costi anche di natura economica che ne deriveranno. Thank you.
Undoubtedly, these are costly interventions. However, if we provide our kids with a greater well-being and help them face the personal and family challenges they are confronted with, such costs will certainly turn into savings and also lay the basis for an active citizenship. Therefore, juvenile justice should be granted the same attention and reforms that the adult judicial system is undergoing. In this view, it should, at least, benefit from digitalization, an instrument it has been deprived of up until now. Similarly, it should be included in the reform that is taking place within the recovery plan, specifically through the creation of what we call process offices, which are offices that are in charge of supervising and organizing trials, dealing with parties and the general population, and systematizing the digital archive. If, as stated by Franco, our Ministry of Economics, the testing ground for the goodness of our reforms is going to be the well-being of our youths, and if we fail to early detect the situation of violence, abuse, or psychological distress that affect our children and adolescents, and don't provide them and their families with adequate support and rehabilitation intervention, we can realistically exclude that social well-being is going to be possible at all, and this will of course entail severe economic costs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Carla Gatto, for your intervention and contribution, very stimulating and informative with all the statistics about our juvenile court. And now I give the floor to Roberta Osculati, member of our municipality and president of the municipality for the family politics and social policies. Thank you.
I'm very pleased and honored to be here to represent the City Council of Milan on this international occasion, where we are going to focus on the child entrustment and adoption through the contribution of an international network of studies and high-quality researches. In this academic context, I'm glad to draw your attention to the role of the policy making in this field, because it's important to join forces to subsidize the welfare of adoptive children and their families. Indeed, policymakers can make more effective decisions if they use information that are family-focused and research-based. Some years ago, in September 2017, I took part in an international meeting here at the Catholic University of Milan, based on the idea of the family impact lens, with the contribution of Dr. Karen Bogenschneider from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In that occasion, I had the pleasure to learn about the family-focused, evidence-informed approach to policy and practice. Her idea was that families have long been recognized for the contributions they make to their members and to society. Yet families are seldom actively involved in the normal course of policy and program development, implementation, and evaluation. The suggestion is to consider the family impact lens as one way to change direction from just appreciating families to acknowledging them as subjects of research, investments, partnerships, and political actions. So this new point of view will allow a different political approach to families by involving them in institutional alliances as part of the general cooperation for framework decisions. In this context of cooperation with families and putting them at the center of its actions, the municipality of Milan faces the problem of adoption in cooperation with the other specialized services and healthcare services. But in particular, I'm going to focus on the path of foster care to help natural family to face a difficult situation that could lead it to be unable to take care of the education and the material and emotional needs of their children. Since the very beginning of foster care, with the law of 1983, the municipality of Milan has created an own specific area devoted to the organization of services and the regulation of foster care of minors. It comprehends a custody coordination, which at first organizes a group information meeting for families who make themselves available for foster care. This meeting is followed by 2 training sessions and an individual knowledge path, which includes some interviews and a home visit. For each foster care project, the territorial, professional, social services make the foster family on one side and the natural family on the other side both sign a custody agreement within which the intervention project is stated. And it's very important, this local reference point, because families can rely on concrete support for their daily life and for daily needs. The latest data about minors trusted to our professional social services in 2020 report that among the city population between 0 and 20 years, 4.32% minors, corresponding to 10,616 children and teenagers only for the year 2020, have been part of an educational or pedagogical support of the foster care. This involves about 260 families in the city of Milan every year. The other children or teenagers are followed by daily educational centers, home-based educational projects, or minors' communities. They all have constant relations with the local service, social service for everything related to the foster care projects and receive individual and group support for the custody coordination. This support aims to facilitate the startup phase or the end phase of foster care. In a second time, it supports the subjects involved during periods of fatigue and the development of child and adolescents in the 2 family contexts between different models and educational or relational styles, which is not easy at all. And finally, the support aims to facilitate communication between all the actors of the foster care project. That's to say, the child or children in foster unit, natural parents, and foster carers, because they are all together part of one and the same community involved in the same program. Upon signing the custody agreement, the municipal administration initiates the distribution of a monthly sum of money to contribute to the maintenance costs of the minor and examines the requests for any extraordinary expenses within the viable financial resources. Activates, in the second time, it activates the insurance coverage provided by the Lombardy region for family custody, for example, injuries for the minor and civil liability, damage caused by the minor to third parties or to the foster family. In conclusion, the foster care has the purpose of protecting children and teenagers and their right to maintain ties with their family of origin, while offering them a family context that supports them in their growth. In this perspective, the problem of foster care sounds like the problem of adoption, even if foster care is by definition temporary. Nevertheless, in both experiences, the problem is to take care of the education and the material and emotional needs of minors. We all know there is no formula to tell families how to solve troubles with their children when such big problems occur. Even though the pandemic experience has taught us about the vital importance of relationships and alliances. Also in this field, we need to move to a circular economy as the heart of the resource efficiency agenda established under the Europe 2020 strategy for smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. This model provides valid not only for the industrial system, but in my personal opinion, it's valid even more for the social system. So why do foster care? The reasons for making a foster care cannot be summarized. They cannot be counted. There is no official list, there is no review or standard answers in which to find one's motivation, in which to seek the reflection of one's feelings. There are only nuances, the nuances of the heart and reason, love and challenge, solidarity and civic sense. Because every custody is an intimate and personal choice, the result of a path that belongs only to oneself, and which, as such, has no labels, no absolute definitions. We only know that for every foster family, this experience is a great adventure that makes it grow. In conclusion, thanks to ICAR7 and to the opportunity of an international debate on our mutual national strategies, I think we can all be provided with a toolkit which will enable us to organize and manage programs that can involve families and let policymakers and administrators think and sort out better programs. So this is why I am glad to listen to the outputs of your studies and take part in this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roberta Osculati, for your talk. And as a sign of our gratitude, here are our flowers and the 3 books already mentioned before. Thank you very, very much to be here and for your contribution, both of them. Thank you. And now I give the floor to Professor Camillo Regalia, who is the director of our Family and Studies Center here at the Catholic University of Milan. Thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of Family Studies and Research University Center, I warmly welcome all the participants around the world to this conference and the authorities here present. Thank you very much for joining this meeting. And as director of the center organizing this conference, I'd like to say a few words for describing the center's activities and the importance of the issue of adoption for our center. The center has its own history, consolidated over time as it was founded in 1976 and in 2006 became officially the Centro di Ateneo Studi e Ricerche sulla Famiglia, Family Studies and Research University Center. Which are the main features describing our center? I underline 5 aspects, and I describe these aspects shortly. First, we are a research center. Therefore, its main mission is to carry out empirical studies about the family. And indeed, in the last decades, the center's research activity have been focusing on several topics. I would dare to say almost all the topics concerning the family transitions and critical events affecting the families. The list of this topic will be very long, but just remember the studies on the couple formation, transformative processes within the couple, the various forms of transition to parenthood, biological, adoptive, foster parenthood, the national and international studies on intergenerational relationships in adolescence and during transition to adulthood, the study of different social policy models for the family and the best practices to apply within family and community perspectives, the issue of reconciliation of work and family, the impact of migration and family dynamics. And now we are engaged in a very important longitudinal study whose aim is to highlight the influence of pandemic on the quality of family relationships, also with a specific focus on the adoptive families too. Second, we are a multidisciplinary center. We firmly believe that family needs to be studied adopting different lenses and perspectives. Therefore, in the center, psychologists and sociologists work together and are engaged in constructive dialogue with colleagues working in the field of demography, economy, philosophy, pedagogy, and law. And all these our research activities documented by a very large production of publications that offer tools for interpretation of and intervention with families in the various stages of development. Besides traditional academic papers, interdisciplinary family studies is the center's most effective tool for the culture's scientific dissemination of empirical results, new perspectives, and innovative practices. From its onset in 1983, this publication has provided a platform for discussions on issues relevant to family dynamics and relationships by experts on different subjects, principally related to psychology and sociology. Among the many, I just remember the 2 issues and the 2 books. For instance, we gave to our guests and to the Minister as well, one devoted to foster and adoptive families, published in 2014, and the last issue has been recently published in June 2021, edited by 2 sociologist colleagues, Donatella Bramanti and Elisa Carra, concerning a really hot topic like family poverty. A third feature of our center is that it is really engaged in an international network of research. Through personal collaboration with colleagues all over the world and institutional participation in different associations, the center is a founding member of REDIF, European Family Institutes Network, of ESFR, European Society on Family Relations, and this is a part of the network of relational studies and sociology. This involvement in wide network research has been always a great opportunity to meet up and exchange theoretical and methodological perspectives and to foster the production of relevant scientific papers and also the opportunity to organize this conference. Fourth aspect, As for the theoretical and methodological framework used by the center scholars and professionals, we share a relational concept of family as a large interplay of relations where the crucial differences in gender, generation, and lineage are bound into each other in order to promote generativity. We firmly believe the family is a potential major source of generativity of different levels. And a subsequent issue underlying our studies, also in the field of adoption, is to understand and find out the factors that promote generativity within the family bonds. As we see later, listening to a first talk, first keynote lecture by Eugenio Scabini, it is a specific quality of family ties that allow generative transmission between generations. And last but not least aspect to underline is the center also provides intensive training for professionals who work with and for families, both at home and abroad, and actively promotes events, project initiatives, seminars, and scientific conferences on both the domestic and international planes. And from the really beginning of our activities, one of the aims of the center, I would say the sole our center, is to build a bridge between theory and practice, to make academic results available and useful for professionals, and offer an interpretation of family dynamics, enabling different forms of intervention for and together with the family. In sum, we are a research center, multidisciplinary center. We adopt a relational approach to study the family. We are involved in different international networks, and we are very close to the world of professionals working with the families. And all these features, all these characteristics can be applied to the topic of adoption. As a center, the attention for adoption has always been very clear, and is part of our specific focus on the potential generative process of family relations. The first publication on the topic of adoption was a review of the literature in 1989, more than 30 years ago. And since then, we have carried out, thanks to the generative collaboration of international scholars, several studies analyzing different aspects of adoption process, the familial and personal antecedents of the choice of adoption, the relational and social resources or obstacles in the adoption process, the effects over time of the adoption for the adopted children and their families. Other colleagues in this conference will say better and more in detail the outcomes of the studies. But I want to stress what the overall findings show is that above and over the several obstacles and also weaknesses family meet in the adoption process, it's important, it is necessary to assume a family dimension when talking about adoption, because the family keeps on remaining to the large extent the primary source for an individualized, personalized, and continuous caring necessary to the psychological and social growth of minor children who suffer from parental neglect. At the same time, adoptive family cannot be neglected during the process of adoption, and the challenges for families and professionals are really demanding and require specific training and education. And in this regard, we develop a second-level master degree on foster care and adoption to meet these challenges. The positive evaluation given by the professionals who attended the masters strengthened our confidence that an interdisciplinary model based on the reciprocal link between theory, research, and practice is likely to be the winning model for projecting more effective intervention in the field of adoption. So, in conclusion, I wish all of you really good work, exchange of results, and in the next day. And again, thank you thank you very much for joining our conference.
Thank you, Professor Camillo Regalia, for your words of encouragement, and thank you to our outstanding keynote speakers for taking part and giving your valuable contribution. Introducing our conference, we would like to open our hearts towards children, and above all, towards abandoned children, children who are living in inadequate relational environment. It's well known that children need relationships more, or at least as much as they need nutrition. We can say they are hardwired to connect, to establish relationships. In other words, they need that personalized and ongoing relationship that only family could provide. Therefore, talking about adoption means focusing on the family as the unique context where children could grow up well healthy and develop their inner nature. This is the foremost reason why we all are here together today, but also the reason why I have always been interested in the adoption field. My dissertation dates back to 1987 and was an empirical study carried out at the juvenile court in Milan about prospective adopted couples. I graduated from here at the Catholic University with Professor Eugenia Scabini, who I'd like to personally thank, and since then she was always been my mentor and supported this research trend. I found at the Family Studies and Research University Center a group of people that have nurtured me and helped me growing professionally, and not only, and to all of them, my thanks. Within our family center, throughout the years, a small group of researchers, that is my adoption research team, and I'm very proud of it, have distinguished themselves also abroad for their research and scientific competence. At the past ICAR conference, and I missed only the first one in 1999, chaired by Al Grotevant, I didn't know it exists, I found a context which has always broadened my horizons and give my rich stimulus for research and practice. I've met a number of researchers with high scientific profiles, with many of whom we have also established not only research collaborations, but also created bonds characterized by esteem and friendship. They are people, and most of them are listening to us now, whom I deeply admire, not only as scholars, but also for their deep and unique humanity traits. Too often, research and practices are going to parallel tracks. ICAR is a wonderful opportunity of encounters and exchanges of empirical findings and best practices to fill the gap between research and practice, as we have already said. ICAR's main aim is to widespread a culture of adoption with a more solid and deeper scientific foundation. And this is particularly relevant here in Italy. Although number of adoptions are always significantly high, intervention and practice based on empirical studies are limited in number, and where the lack of inadequate widespread of post-adoption intervention is quite significant. I believe that this research trend is aligned with the main mission of our university, just as it has developed during the past 100 years from its foundation by Padre Agostino Gemelli in 1921. Padre Agostino Gemelli was a psychologist, so that 100 years from its foundation means 100 years of psychology here at our university. The mission has always been focusing on global development of the person and carrying out empirical studies deeply linked to the current social context and with useful practical implication. So I wish to all of you to find in these 4 days of conference what ICAR has represented in my life, a context of scientific and cultural insights and stimulus, a context of widespread international perspective, of collaboration and discussion, sharing the same aim, that is to promote children's well-being. I'd like to give you a very quick overlook of ICAR7 and its number. Yesterday, we held the first edition of ICAR Summer School with 24 young and promising researchers. At the virtual presence of 3 outstanding keynote speakers, Professor Palacios, Professor Esther Lanz, and Professor Richard Lee, they presented a research project and received valuable suggestions from them and from their peers, exchanged ideas aimed at implementing their research program, and developed an international network of young researchers. About 240 people are going to attend the conference, coming from 27 different countries in the world, an international conference. On the last day of the conference, the plenary session will take place regarding long-term consequences of institutionalization and traumas, and it will be also translated into Italian so that more than 380 people, in addition to ICAR participants, will join us and participate to our conference. So around 600 people will be here with us. The program will include 12 keynote speeches, 5 invited symposia, 9 symposium, 17 thematic sessions, poster, please presentation, for a total number of 345 presentations. In addition, 3 food for thoughts that are talks with senior scholars reserved only to students and young researchers, and 3 social events. A special thanks to all those who have given their contribution to this conference, to our sponsor for their generous support that have made this conference possible. Along with our Family Center, I would like to mention Istituto Tognolo, our Department of Psychology, the RAD Foundation, Human Highway, Cariplo Foundation, the Family Institute European Network, the Italian Association of Psychology, and to all the people who gave their contribution through the crowdfunding. My warmest thanks to our rector for opening our university and hosting this conference, for collaborating and giving support to the organization. And in particular, I would like to thank Dr. Fantinata and Dr. Negri and their staff, who have devoted a lot of time and energy to make the conference a successful one. Thank you also to Maria Carla Gatto, President of the Juvenile Court, Roberta Osculati, member of the municipality, and last but not least, thanks to our Director of the Family Study and Research University Center, Camillo Regalia, and his team. Here, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce to you our ICAR7 committee, Sonia Ranieri, Laura Ferrari, Elena Canzi, Elena Canzi and Francesca Dagnoni. I'll take the opportunity, Camilla, I take the opportunity to thank my truly amazing staff for working so hard, especially during this rough period, and still managed to show a great teamwork, dedication, energy, effort to give you a great conference. I can't thank them enough. And this is a sign of our gratitude. And thank you very, very much. And a special thanks also to our young team of graduate students who were involved in these months preparing this conference and devoted much of their time, creativity, and digital competence to prepare videos and presentations you will enjoy. Some of them are here in presence, others are already behind the screen, ready to start with the online conference. Thanks to Alice Boveri, Cristina Ferreri, Alice Freri, Arianna Savastio, Giuliana Lafico, Federica Torrazzi, and Sara De Virgilis. We are all already connected to our web platform, almost ready to attend the conference. A great thank you to all of you who have chosen to join us at ICAR7, and I wish to all of you a fruitful and productive time together, sharing our commitment to build a better future for future generations to come. I'm very pleased to introduce the welcome by Hal Grotevant, who first promoted ICAR more than 20 years ago, and to whom I would like to especially thank for this particularly appreciated and long-lasting project that is ICAR. A special thank you for supporting this edition and for the help you provided to me and my staff. Immediately after Hal's Grotevant welcome address, a special concert will take place here in our Aula Magna by the orchestra of our very talented university students. Professor Enrico Reggiani will introduce to you our Studio Musicale di Ateneo. So the concert will be here and it's played by students, graduate students. The musicians are graduate students. Thank you very much, and please stay tuned.
And we cannot end this ceremony, opening ceremony, without thanking and be grateful for Rosa. This is a bunch of roses for our beautiful Rosa. Because without her, nothing would be happening. And so I really thank her for her passion, intention, and her great soul. And thank you again.
Grazie.
La faccio di...
Del Covid. Vieni qua, Camillo. Così facciamo la foto. Facciamone una...
Greetings from my home near the University of Massachusetts Amherst in the USA. My name is Hal Grotevant, and I lead the Rudd Adoption Research Program here. I also had the pleasure of being the first host of the International Conference on Adoption Research and have been excited to see it grow over the years. In this brief presentation, I'd like to say a bit about ICAR, past, present, and future, to whet your appetite for this exciting conference we'll be experiencing together this week. Now, I am a developmental and family psychologist, and I've been conducting research on adoption for over 45 years. During that time, I presented my work on adoption and adoptive families at numerous conferences, including those in psychology, child development, social work, adolescence, family science, and identity. And although it was never difficult to put together an interesting symposium, the number of interested people in the audience tended to be small. Sometimes those on the panel would outnumber those in the audience, which of course was quite disappointing. Although there was a growing number of adoption researchers, those in the group represented different disciplines. Again, psychology, sociology, medicine, social work, public health, nursing, psychiatry, family science, and everyone attended different conferences. So one day in 1998, when I was at the University of Minnesota, I was having a conversation with one of my graduate students, Manfred von Dolman, who is now Dean of the Graduate School at Kent State University, about the value of an international conference focused exclusively on adoption research that would bring people together who otherwise would not meet. We discussed this idea with our research team, the Minnesota-Texas Adoption Research Project, and the idea met with great excitement. Although we had no funding and no professional organization behind us, we discussed the idea with a number of departments and centers on campus, many of which contributed small amounts of money to help us make it happen. We reserved space at the small hotel on campus and sent out invitations for people to participate. The first ICAR occurred in August of 1999, and this meeting attracted approximately 100 enthusiastic participants. Proceedings from some of the keynote addresses were published in Adoption Quarterly in 2000. The new journal had just begun 3 years earlier. The conference focused on the following 4 questions. What are the most important things we've learned about persons involved in adoption and the interpersonal relationships among them? What are the special conceptual and methodological issues inherent in conducting research on adoption? How can we improve the quality and quantity of adoption research? And how can we improve the linkages across research, theory, practice, and policy? You'll note that many of these guiding questions continue to guide the work of ICAR to this date. Here you can see our panel of enthusiastic student volunteers who helped us put this together, as well as our very first poster session. The 4-day intensive conference featured keynote addresses, presentations, roundtables, poster sessions, and of course, quality time for socializing. In addition to a banquet, attendees embarked on a cruise up and down the St. Croix River, which divides Minnesota from Wisconsin. We had a really good time. Some of the group also took a shopping excursion to the Mall of America, the largest indoor shopping mall in the United States. There was a strong consensus that the conference should continue, and people were invited to consider hosting ICAR too. Now, of course, one of the difficulties was there was not a professional organization behind the conference, so that the host would need to figure out the funding and the logistics. It took several years, but the second conference occurred in July of 2006, sponsored by Beth Neal at the Center for Research on the Child and Family on the campus of the University of East Anglia in Norwich, England. This conference continued and broadened the scope of the first ICAR, including keynotes by Wayne Karp, historian of adoption, and you see Wayne on the right-hand picture here in the middle, and Peter Selman, demographer of adoption. 14 papers from this conference were published in a volume edited by Gretchen Robel and Beth Neal and published by Wiley Blackwell in 2009. Here you can see the Elizabeth Fry Building, home to the School of Social Work, and the famed ziggurats on campus, which provide housing for students at the university. Always happy to socialize, we boarded the bus for an adventure in the countryside. The welcoming session for the conference was in the beautiful Norwich Cathedral. And here there was a stained glass window memorializing the 14th century mystic Julian of Norwich, who famously said, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Finally, you see a view of the Norwich market on a busy weekday morning. The enthusiasm following the first 2 ICARs led to a smaller interval between conferences. In July of 2010, Femi Yuffer and her team at the Center of Child and Family Studies at Leiden University in the Netherlands sponsored ICAR 3 on their university campus. As with other ICAR hosts, FEMI was able to garner support from a number of centers affiliated with the university. We enjoyed the picturesque city of Leiden, including its canals, its fine restaurants, and its artwork. The opening day of the conference featured the World Cup soccer finals, Netherlands versus Spain. We ended the sessions early so that we could listen to the game and join the celebration no matter who won. Spain did win 1-0. It was a very exciting game, but I will say there were many disappointed Dutch fans in the streets. Continuing a tradition of semi-regular conferences, Jesus Palacios hosted ICAR4 in Bilbao, Spain in July of 2013. Jesus's home institution of the University of Seville would be incredibly hot in July, and so he thoughtfully arranged for the conference to be in the northern city of Bilbao, home to the beautiful Guggenheim Museum designed by Frank Gehry. The sessions were held on the beautiful University of Deusto, just across the river from the Guggenheim. Here you see the opening session held at the university, featuring music and dance of the region. During the conference, we were taken by bus to a beautiful restaurant in the countryside, featuring peacocks and excellent food. We socialized long into the night, enjoying the singing of a local choir and celebrating a number of birthdays of those of us who were attending the dinner. Here you see the university in the center, the Guggenheim Museum on the lower right, and some of the stunning flower sculptures that were in the area. The weather was always beautiful and sunny for us. Departing from the string of conferences in Europe, ICAR5 was hosted by Rhoda Sherman at the Auckland University of Technology in Auckland, New Zealand. The conference was hosted in January, which of course is New Zealand summer, and afforded many of us an opportunity to visit a part of the world we had never experienced before. The conference included many authentic cultural practices and events, including daily acknowledgement of the true ownership of the land on which we were meeting, and a welcoming haka from a local group. We even had our own cultural emissary from the university, a young man named Weremu Tipuna, who taught us some songs to welcome each day and shared much with us about his culture. Rhoda and her team commissioned a special piece of art, a wood sculpture, for ICAR to hand down from one host to the next. You will learn more about this later in the conference, but the inscription is written in the Maori language, and it reads as follows: "With your basket of knowledge and my basket of knowledge, the people will be well cared for." We enjoyed the beautiful city of Auckland. The university is located downtown, affording easy access to shops and the waterfront. Auckland was recently voted one of the most livable cities in the entire world. The city is rich with monuments and museums displaying the beautiful art of the indigenous Maori people. ICAR is now beginning to occur with more regularity, with ICAR6 being offered in Montreal, Canada in July of 2018, the first time back in North America since the conference's founding. The host, Geneviève Paget, arranged for the conference to be offered both in English and in French, in keeping with the bilingual approach taken by the Canadian province of Quebec. Here we see one of the symposia, which featured speakers on site, as well as Alex Gilbert, who was Skyping in from his home in New Zealand. At the time in 2018, this was quite innovative, but of course, after a year of teaching and holding meetings via Zoom, this seems a very natural thing to be doing. And of course, we'll be doing it this week in our conference. The traditional banquet was held on an evening river cruise down the St. Lawrence River. The food, the company, and even the dancing were wonderful. The city of Montreal offered many cultural opportunities, including the Basilica and its powerful organ, and a number of museums and galleries. But of course, we were all sad to leave Montreal when the meeting ended. But that has brought us to Milan. Of course, the story of ICAR7 has been much more complicated than anyone expected. Our wonderful host, Rosa Rosnati, and her team had planned to welcome us in July of 2020, a year ago. But the global pandemic and lockdown had other ideas. Even an in-person conference in 2021 seemed impossible. So we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Rosa and her team for persisting and finding this virtual way for us to gather. Let me join the voices of the others in welcoming you and saying how good it will be to be back together, even virtually. Rosa has a wonderful menu of keynote addresses, symposia, papers, posters, special events, and social events awaiting us over the next 4 days. I'm so excited to see what's in store for us. And of course, at the end of the conference, we will announce the location and dates for ICAR 8. So please be sure to attend the closing ceremonies. Where in the world will we be going? In closing, I'd like to say that the fact that we've met in so many different countries really underscores the importance of understanding adoption in its cultural and historical contexts. Each country has distinctive adoption policies and practices, and meeting around the world has allowed us to gain a deeper appreciation for the many ways in which adoption is contextualized. I wish you all a wonderful conference, and I look forward to seeing you as we cross paths during the week. My warmest thanks to all of the ICAR hosts who have kept the spirit of the initial conference alive, and to all of the hosts of the future for helping advance the science of adoption and its connection to practice and policy. Enjoy the conference and welcome.
It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you in a very unique way. Thanks to the generous support of our sponsor, this opening ceremony will end in a very amazing way. I'm very pleased to present you to a special musical concert offered by our Studium Musicale di Ateneo. It's a special concert, not only because it takes place in our beautiful Aula Magna, but also because it's played by an orchestra composed of our talented students. Yes, our students. These musicians you see here are students and graduate students and scholars of Professor Enrico Reggiani, who I would like to introduce to you. He is full professor of English literature and director of the Studium Musicale di Ateneo. They are here to let you listen to and enjoy the atmosphere of our university. You will listen to a selection of pieces of Johann Sebastian Bach, but also some pieces of his 11th child, Johann Christian Bach, who became a very famous composer as well. We could say that Bach's family was unique, and talents were not only transmitted from one generation to the following one, but were also nurtured with commitment and dedication. Yes, that's true for all families in general, and their main task is to nurture talents, whatever they might be, and even more importantly, for adoptive families. I would like to especially thank Maestro Professor Reggiani and his students for offering us a moment of pure beauty. Thank you.
We thank you, Professor Rosnati, because this is a very special occasion, and this is an occasion we are grateful for, because in these years that have been so hard for everybody, in these years it has been quite difficult for us to find ourselves in these situations, organizing a real performance, not a virtual one. So, thanks. What I'd like to stress is that when it comes to family in music, obviously the Bach family is, the most important, the most famous one, the greatest also from the point of view of numbers. And the Bach family, was born, so to speak, in a very small place in Thuringia, but then, thanks to what happened in its history, it, diffused itself, it developed as kind of a European and cosmopolitan reality because, it became famous all over the world. And Johann Christian Bach, which is one of the two authors, represented here from the Bach family, was also known as the London Bach, okay, the English Bach. So no one was adopted, I think, but nonetheless, the Bach family is, the best example of what may happen in a family when the family works as it should. Thank you so much and enjoy this. Bye.
fecit mihi magna. Quia fecit mihi magna, qui potens qui potens est. Quia fecit mihi magna, qui potens est, et sanctum nomen eius, et sanctum nomen, et sanctum nomen eius, sanctum nomen eius, sanctum nomen eius, et sanctum nomen eius. Quia fecit mihi magna, qui potens est, et sanctum nomen, sanctum nomen eius. veni